Welcome back to Vault Agentics, where we bring you conversations with leading minds shaping cybersecurity in the tech world today. I'm your host, Hani Braish. Today, we're honored to speak with someone who spent 30 years defending digital front lines, not just reacting to threats, but building strong, resilient security practices from the ground up. Please join me in welcoming Bob Vail, founder and CEO of WoodSec Security Consultants. Bob, thanks for joining. Thank you. Thank you. Excited to dig into the journey, the philosophy, and some of the predictions you might have for the cybersecurity landscape here. So, before we jump in to the deep end here, could you just tell us a little bit about how you got started, what drew you into IT and information security decades ago when you just started out?
Certainly. I'll start with I went back to school in my mid-30s. I had done a bunch of very fun jobs, but not jobs that were ever going to allow me to retire outside of a cardboard box. So I went back to school and got a degree in board-level electronics, not really knowing yet what that was going to do for me, but I started out doing that. I had a friend, our sons went to school together, and he's a robotics expert. And so he got me excited about robotics. So I went and got a board level degree. And so I could, understand the circuitry that drives robotics. When I graduated, I ended up doing a bunch of work with him. He had a company he was running in San Gregorio, and we were doing kind of projects that were customer based, and then a few things that he wanted to do. Our primary big project was a plotter, which was a sandblaster. So instead of spraying ink, it sprayed abrasives. Sand is a good example, but also some other harsher materials to cut into different things that we wanted. And then the mechanism was designed on a plotter so that you could take a Photoshop image and cut that image into whatever material you put in front of the plotter. That could be steel or wood or glass even, and glass was my favorite. And we took a very famous picture of Albert Einstein with his hair all in disarray, and we cut that into an inch thick piece of green glass. And so if you understand the concept of grayscale on the plotter that's cutting, grayscale is depth of cut, so time over spot. And so the longer, obviously, you spray the abrasive in one place, it makes a deeper cut. And as the plotter was moving along printing this picture, it would pause or go quickly, depending on how deep the cut, based on the grayscale of the image. I thought this was magic. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But my friend Bill, he took a legal pad and drew circuit diagrams, and they would hand it to me and say, build this. And so I did. Took
And you got there. You got
components,
there.
a single dead bug chip. So you put the chip upside down and solder the legs of the chip to different components, and we put them in a little aluminum box. The idea being that we would eventually plug this into the control system that would take in a Photoshop image and manage the plotter, the X and Y, so that the print head basically was in the right place, but also would control the amount of air being released. The idea being that you would want to turn off the air where there was no grayscale of any kind, but just a white space, right? But the air was at 250 psi, which means the valve to turn that off had to have a lot of horsepower to shut that off and then
Yeah.
reallow that kind of air pressure. So our circuit needed an amp, a full amp, to turn that valve off. So we're feeding an amp through this homemade thing that I've soldered together. The first one took me half a day to put together, and then I built 9, and every one of those, including the first one, resulted in a small fire because running an amp through a circuit takes some tuning. Otherwise, you get an amp full of electricity.
Yeah.
So the 22nd worked, and we were able to cut this picture into glass. And then I didn't have the vision that my mentor had. And he said, okay, now I'm going to show you why this is interesting. He put a strip of LEDs inside a channel cut into wood and stood the glass up over the top of the lights. And so now the light is coming up through the glass. And what this does to this cut-in image, it makes it three-dimensional. And so this picture literally pops off the glass. this got me very excited, of course, about
Yeah.
robotics and electronics, and that would have been a really interesting venture, but my partner got very ill and had to have a heart transplant, and that kind of put that project away. So I moved
Yeah.
on to what did I do next? Telecom and then, um, uh, IT and then eventually information security. Over the years, I've worked in, wealth management and retail banking and lending and agile software and, been around the block. 13 years ago, I started my own consulting firm for information security. And so now I do things like virtual CISO advisory for startups, lots of interesting projects. And I have my own company and I'm the only person in it. And so I don't have HR problems. I don't work for anybody that I don't like unless I'm mad at myself.
Yeah.
So overall, I have arrived here after a significant journey of doing lots of different things. Recently, I met some folks at RSA that are working on what I think is our greatest future problem coming. And so I'm really excited about working with them on post quantum encryption. That's what I'm up to these days.
Okay. Awesome. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into that in a minute. But look, I mean, you've clearly done a lot. Besides the musician, a pilot, a consultant, a CTO, like you're like in terms of the industry, looking at like 30 years, the landscape's changed dramatically, right? So
Yeah, and then some.
I
Yeah.
yeah, like even the past 6 months or year, we could get and maybe a little bit comment onto what you're seeing kind of more recently, but ultimately, what major shifts did you witness and how did that kind of like shaped how you approach security?
Really good question. I'll start with the simple stuff. When I first started doing IT, we were building servers with white box Intel processors in big, huge iron with floppy disk. So it took hours to make anything work, and uh, RAID arrays, redundant disks. You had to have a card that you put into the machine, and of course, you had to load all the drivers to make sure that it could talk to the card, and then plug in all the drives, and on and on and on and on and on. And so, to build a single machine in those days for a server was maybe as much as 2 days, depending on what it was for and what you were going to use it for. From that to where we are in the cloud with, I'll just use AWS as an example. With call it 7 clicks, you can have a 3-tier application running in the cloud. You can have a database that's already configured and set up and running your big pile of data, and a middle tier to sort things out in a web interface. And then if you use elastic computing, you can scale that so that literally hundreds of machines can get spawned automatically to scale out to almost infinite capability. From where I started to being able to do that now,
Amazing.
it's indescribably different. It is absolutely uh, a different world. But
Yeah.
I have to say, having the experience of building those things and the networks that they ran on, and I designed and built data centers over my career as well, understanding the infrastructure and what it meant to get cooling in the right places and all of that stuff. What I will say now is that infrastructure is no longer useful to build unless you have a very specific purpose. And so many, many companies have given up on this idea that they need to run a data center of their own because you really have to have a good reason to do that. Now, I know some very large companies that I have helped with security issues, and they are dead set against using the cloud for anything that they do.
Yeah. Typically in defense, public sector, you see those kind of strict
Sure.
regulatory
And it's
environments.
interesting though,
Right.
because at the end of the day, I don't think that there's any private company out there that can build a data center that competes in quality and security with Google or Microsoft or AWS.
AWS and Azure,
And
exactly.
so
And you have
I
those resources
understand the
behind you.
paranoia, I do,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a matter of perspective. There's a famous European tire manufacturer. That's as far as I'm going on the identification.
Okay.
They were adamant that they are convinced that their on-prem data centers are the most secure in the world, including the US Department of Defense. I'm smart enough not to break their illusion, but,
But it's tougher to believe. Exactly.
well,
I mean,
and denial is
it's
not just a river in Egypt.
yeah, exactly. Right. Everybody's proud of their estate that they've set up as well. Right.
Now we have
Rightfully so.
AI, right? And if you wanna talk about the next really crazy thing that has occurred to compute
Let's do
is
it.
we have this general acceptance about really unknown technology. And it's a very interesting place for me because coming from a security perspective, I know people that are vibe coding applications that they have no idea how they actually work.
Yeah.
That are saying, "Hey, ChatGPT," or name your favorite, "I need an application that will," and fill in the blank, and out pops something that appears to be working and secure. And I say appears to be because the people who are then accepting that and putting it into play really have no idea and
Yeah.
haven't gone through the code to make sure that they understand it in case it catches fire. Because 'Cause they'll
Yeah.
just vibe another one, right? And
Yeah.
the general acceptance of these things to me is, risk is like anything else. I worked for a company that had tremendously important secret data. And the truth about even those companies is as long as their customers agree, they can accept whatever risk that they want to. Now, it's, when the customers go, no, never mind, and move on, they'll probably modify some of those opinions. But to be fair, there is no such thing as unacceptable risk. It's an opinion. Now, if you look at the standards like ISO 27001 and NIST 853, et cetera, there are some guidelines and some absolutes where, yeah, you have to have passwords for your administrators or at
Yeah.
least some mechanism. You
It's
can't just
basics.
let
Exactly.
anybody log
Like
into
there's
you.
zero. Net. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But those opinions and those acceptance of risk that I have seen personally are based on business need more than they are about the security of anything in particular. So,
Yes.
if
Yes.
you're
Agree. Agree.
Visa, you don't want to give up the credit card information, but not for the sake of the credit card information, but because that will bankrupt you because your customers won't come back anymore.
Yeah.
And because it's finance that is ultimately the measure, what I think really has changed the perspective around security was the introduction of the FAIR methodology. Right? If you're familiar with that, that's the financial assessment of information risk. So that you can tell business people that you're going to have a bad day and it's going to cost you this amount of money. And the solution so that you don't have that bad day will cost you about 10% of that loss. And business people will go, 10% to avoid that big loss. Okay, let's fix that. Conversely, if you said you're going to have a bad day and it's going to make a lot of people upset, there's no financial information there. And people with
Correct.
an MBA and whose expertise is in finance and running a business will say things like, "Are you trying to scare me?" Or
Got to
"Is this a
quantify
measure
it
of
without metrics, without the proper metrics behind it. It's just basically an emotional burden.
Precisely. And so
Yeah.
this is why I believe so strongly in the FAIR methodology is that it creates a common language between security and business. And, if you can't quantify, then you can say things like, well, that's an orange risk. No, it's not as bad as a red, and it's better than a yellow. Come on.
Yeah.
This has no
Yeah.
meaning to business people. And therefore, you lose their trust, you lose their respect, and you get what we used to call the BlackBerry prayer. You're in a meeting with the board of directors and everybody's looking at their cell phone,
Yep. Yep.
because they have no idea what you're talking about. So I think those are two very big things. The next one, which we will need to get to, is what it means for quantum compute and how that is going to change our universe in computing. And I think we should get to that, but it has problems as well in terms of perception. We have government
Yeah.
experts saying,
Let's Bob just back up.
"Sure,
Apologies to interrupt here. Like, I want to get into Woodside Security Consultants. Like, walk us through. It's 13 years ago. Like, why the leap, right? And what gap in the industry were you looking to fill then? And then let's then progress to now with quantum and how you're seeing things, and then get deeper into that right now.
Great.
So I think
So
that'd be a great flow.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll tell you the funny bit of the story. So I was not even in security at the time when I started my consulting company. I was systems administrator at one of the biggest financials on the planet, and loved my work and was having a good time. My wife was a hairdresser at the time, and one of her clients learned that I was an IT guy and said, "My mother is having a problem with her computer. Do you think your husband could help her?" And so my wife volunteered me to help this very nice old lady. I liked her a lot, and she was very pleasant. So I ended up at her house starting to, I said, "Okay, I'm gonna come over, but I'm gonna charge you $125 an hour. If I fix it in 2 minutes, you're paying me the first hour. As long as
Yeah.
we're clear, because that's what I'm charging for this. Because I really don't wanna do this, but I'm gonna help you."
Yeah.
So I show up and I said, "So what's the problem?" And she said, "Every time I open my CD player, my computer quits." Okay, that's odd. Let's see how that works. So she takes me into where her computer is, and it was an old system unit that was sitting on her desk with a removable hard drive that had a handle on it. And I said, "Can you show me what happens when you open the CD player?" She grabs the handle on the removable hard drive and pulls it out of the system unit, and it blue screened. It didn't even actually blue screen, it just quit,
Yeah.
froze, and that was it, and I'm like, "Aha, okay, so let's put that back in," and, all those removable drives had a key so that you could lock them in place, and I said, "Do you have the key?" And she said, "Yes," and I locked it in place. I said, "Lose this, there's no reason for you ever to take it out ever again." And
Yeah.
she said, "Well, how am I supposed to play CDs?" And I said, "Well, do you know where the coffee cup holder is?" And she said, "Yeah, it's this drawer here." So she opened the CD
Put it in
player.
there. Exactly.
And so, okay, it didn't take me long to fix her problem,
Yeah.
but she was so pleased that I was able to fix it. I got calls from her friends and their friends. And so I was like, all right, well, okay, if I'm going to do this, then I'm not going to do it fly by night, and I'll set up a business. And so that's how my consulting business got started.
Awesome.
After several years of running as a DBA, I formed an LLC, and I had a number of early stage security companies that were kind of blowing up with the cloud that were friends of mine. And so one of them was one of the first CASB. So CASB is a cloud application security broker. The only other one that I was familiar at the time was terrible, ran really slow, was really hard to administer. And these guys were a bunch of guys out of the Mossad 8200 division that had come to California from Israel,
Yep.
and I got to know them pretty well. And I was at a big software company, early stage, very strange startup that was a subsidiary of an even larger company. I'm avoiding all the names, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And
I have
so
ideas. We have
these
ideas. So
these guys, I was one of their very first paying customers and got on the advisory board for customers. And they said, "So what do you think? Do you like our thing?" And they were very proud. Generally a pretty good thing, except that their UI was built for marketing and not for the SOC. And so I said, "Your everything looks interesting, and the communications capabilities and gathering the data, I think, is very strong, but I don't think you know who your customers are." And they didn't like that much. And so never got to explain that until they
yeah.
called me a couple of weeks later and went, "Okay, so what did that mean?"
Yeah.
And I
They
said, "Well,"
realized after speaking to a few people, right? Yeah.
so I helped them to design what looks like a stoplight UI. If you're having a really bad day, you have a big red thing, and you can click on that and drill in and figure out why you're having a bad day. If you're having sort of a bad day, you get a yellow, and same thing, you can drill in. And if you're having a normal day and there's nothing wrong with the things that you're looking at, you can swipe left and open one of the other 100 dashboards that you have to look at if you're in the SOC, which means you have a friendly tool for the poor people that have to watch logs go by all day. Turns out that was a pretty good idea, and I worked with their team to build it, and that was a lot of fun for me, and I really liked all those people. And about 6 months from then, one of the oldest and most famous software companies on the planet bought them for several $100 million. And so I had a kind of this string of other companies, some that grew directly out of that group of people and others who were friends of friends. And so now it's been 16 out of 19 that I've advised that are acquired or have IPO'd or are well on their way to that. And so
That is
that's,
an amazing track record.
and
And,
I love my
even,
work. And so it's just a hoot. It's a lot of fun. And I get to learn about things long before they ever hit the market. I get to opine on things that I think are important. And I get to help friends of mine. And in some cases, I had one that was doing deception technology, commonly referred to as a honeypot, but more advanced.
yeah,
And I liked them a lot, but they didn't have any money. So
okay.
I got equity and I
And
helped
it
them for
worked
a
out.
while and they got on their feet and they started selling. And 9 years later, I got a check in the mail for $20,000, but not from them, from a completely other company and that I'd never done any work for. And
Yeah,
I looked at this and I said, well, it's nice of them to send me cash, but since I've never worked for them, I don't know why I'm getting this. So I read through, and I discover, oh, they acquired that company that I did all this work
that's
for
hilarious.
equity.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah,
I'm never going to become an internet billionaire because that's not what I aspire to be. One,
yeah,
and two, consulting at the level that I'm consulting, I'm not duplicating my efforts, right? I don't have employees that where I get to have them make money and I get to make money off it. I'm doing what I love to do. And
yeah.
so far it pays the bills. And so
Absolutely, and
that's
you're
what
helping,
WoodSec is.
right? You're staying on the cutting edge. You're hearing some amazing things out there. You're helping friends, companies in a cutting edge, bleeding edge industry, right? So that brings us to quantum. I mean, how tell me a little bit about that. Some insights on quantum and what you're looking to do here.
So let me start with another friend who I met for another reason, still around encryption, but not quantum. And this is a guy who's so smart and such a math head, as I like to call him. He does fractals for fun, something I would be interested in. But
Yeah,
this is how brilliant he is.
to each their own. You
Yeah.
know.
And so he broke 128-bit RSA on a laptop because he's smart, because he understood that the keys are based on multiplication of prime numbers. And so, in his kind of twisted way of thinking, he thought, I can build an prime number, what's the right way to put it? Rainbow table. So we know that the keys are generated by multiplying given sizes of prime numbers to get a non-prime number, but this is your key generation system, how to do this. And he broke that with a laptop. He calculated the results of prime numbers out to 16 digits. And so, wow, okay. This led to a whole nother discovery of his about the harmonics of numbers. And he went off on another tangent, which I really enjoyed reading, but is not practical for me.
Yeah,
But it set me off on a path of thinking, well, as long as we're calculating entropy, then it's a reversible equation. A plus B equals C. If you have A and C, you could derive B. Just that simple. And so, okay, we've been told over the years that, to break RSA type encryption, you need a supercomputer. In 1,000 years, good luck, have a nice day. Okay, it's reasonably unbreakable.
yeah,
Now we have quantum to discuss, which is massive parallel high speed compute. And in theory, with enough qubits, you could break RSA 4096 in about 6 minutes because it's just math. There's different about it. It's just math. And to be fair, one of the things I learned early on in the electronics business was that computers count. And that's what they do. They don't do anything else. At their base level, they count. And they count in binary. And then we take the results of the equations and we give them meaning. For example, an 8-bit digital number can represent the letter A. To be specific, the letter capital A. And we know what the binary representation of capital A is. It's just math. It can represent numbers. It can represent all of the things that are in now Unicode, used to be just ASCII. But, right, this is what computers do. They count, period. And then we take the results of their counting and we make that have meaning. And so if you're playing a video game, you're essentially looking at XY coordinates on your screen changing. That's what makes it work. It's just math. It looks like magic. It's really cool fun,
Yeah.
but it's just counting. And so when you get into what makes a computer fast, it's the clock, how fast you can turn this thing on and off. And so if you can do that 3.6 billion times every second, you can look really cool and really smart when in fact you're counting. But it looks like magic because it goes so fast. Which means if we get into massive parallel, we can do tens of thousands of things 3 billion times a second. Which means, okay, humans can't do this. Humans can't even approach this. But the difference is your computers are not thinking, they're counting. And what we've programmed all of the results of all those things to mean looks like thinking, but it's not. It is just the machine has not changed in any way, shape, or form. At its very core, whether it's a processor, a CPU, or a GPU, it's still digital, man. It's just counting. So knowing that that capability can continue to advance exponentially as discoveries are applied to other discoveries, etc., we will eventually have systems that can do math beyond what we ever thought we were going to be able to do, which is what the risk is with quantum. It's not going to do magic. It's just going to count, but it's going to do it at a parallel processing and at a speed that we can't really even conceive of. And so a key that is 4,000 characters long or 4096 characters long for a system that can run in parallel at those speeds will go, oh, here you go. So if you think about what AI, why it looks so smart, it's literally playing. This is very simplified, but it'll make sense to you. It's playing 20 questions. So if you and I were to play the old cocktail party game, I'm thinking of, and your first question is it animal? And I say yes or no. It's a binary thing. And if I say no, you say, is it mineral? And I say no. Well, what does that leave? Vegetable, right? Those are the things that it can be.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 3 questions, you know that it's not a person and it's not an animal and it's not a rock or, right? It's not an element in the universe. It's a vegetable. It's some kind of living plant. You have narrowed the field of things that are possible by asking 3 questions. Then you have to start asking, okay, is it something you can eat, et cetera? And off you go. But the answers are always yes, no. And by no, you eliminate. And by yes, you narrow down, okay, I'm cutting this down. If you think about what AI is doing at its base, it's playing 20 questions, but it's playing at 3.6 billion questions a second.
Yeah. Essentially with itself. Right. And I mean, when prompted, you could take these 20 questions and come up with some pretty good answers. Right.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
And so the trick to the prompt is language. And so if you go back to, the days of when Siri was first out and we, allowed the Star Trek dream, right? You could click your little badge and say computer, and it would go, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what language is, right? And so we've combined this logical exercise of asking questions in a binary form and the understanding of human language. Once you have English, or frankly, once you have Chinese, you can get to English. Once you have Chinese and English, you can get to Russian, and off you go. You can decode all of it. It's language. And so with AI using language and hypercompute, we have magic. We have a thinking machine. No, we have a counting machine, and we have to ask a whole bunch of questions to get there. Okay, it looks really smart, it goes really fast, and gee whiz, you can say, "Hey, ChatGPT, who is the 19th president of the United States?" That's factual information. It's gonna turn that around faster than you could even finish asking the question.
Yeah.
When you get into what would happen if, then there's a lot of this stuff that's going on
Yeah.
that you have to kind of trust that the logical progression through binary question to get to something that looks like fact has a lot of places it can trip and fall. Some of my favorite examples are where there was an attorney who either was out with a girl or drinking or doing something where instead of polishing his brief for the next day in court, he was doing something else and then decided to use an AI tool to write his brief. He took that into court and the judge looked at it and said, "This isn't precedent. This is fiction. There's no such ruling. What is this?"
Yeah.
Boy, that was not a good day for the lawyer.
Yeah.
But
I can't
again,
imagine. Yeah.
hallucination is something we've all kind of gotten used to. The idea is, well, we didn't ask the right question, and so the computer kind of had to make it up.
So that's a big risk for you. Obviously, that kind of complacency in, adopting these technologies, right?
Well, and accepting things as fact that may or may not be.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a rather famous one I heard just the other day repeated again. They were asking an AI question about how they would be able to converse more about the subject. Well, they were just asking the AI, okay, so what other questions should I ask you to expand my understanding? And the AI answered, "I'm on the eighth floor wearing a blue blazer and a red tie." Really? What?
All right.
Why it
Fair.
decided
Yeah.
that it's because part of programming for AI is to be friendly and
Yeah.
welcoming to humans, not calling them stupid, right?
Yeah.
But I'm on the eighth floor wearing a blue blazer and a red tie.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That person wasn't prompting similar things after that.
It is two things that I say. I use these examples. It's not because I don't think AI is the future, and I don't think that AI is useful in many, many ways, and I use it. I often will do research and take notes and write crap and say, "Hey, can you clean this up and make sure that the meaning is what I meant to say here?" And my writing is better when I get a second set of eyes, whether that's human or AI. And I still get to decide on the final product if it says what I think is truth. When we get to the risk of trusting something that we don't understand, it's like mythology. You know,
Yeah.
why is there lightning? Well, Zeus is mad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Bob, and I love the analogy. I love where you're going with this here. I mean, with quantum right now, you could say a lot of it is theory, or a lot of people believe in its theoretical nature, right?
Yes.
Now, if we're going back to that business value versus risk, right? We have people all over the world doing whatever they are doing right now, state sponsored attacks and so on and so forth. The bad actors are not going away. What is the business value in quantum versus the risk of maybe that the bad actors there,
Very good
right?
question.
And it's a very interesting time right now. How do you at Woodside Security help bring your clients to the right side of the equation, if you
Very
will?
good. So I'll start with
Yeah.
the first part of your question. It requires a definition of bad actor. So there is a lawsuit, international lawsuit currently going on where the United States captured 127,000 bitcoins from Chinese national because
Fair, fair. Yeah,
he's a criminal and maybe, but they took
yes,
his Bitcoin, and at 127,000 bitcoins, that's a significant seizure of someone who's technically not subject to U.S. law.
yeah,
That's who's the bad actor.
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand it. I understand the logic. I really do. But the issue isn't the motivation of the person, it's the capability of doing that. This is what quantum gives us. There's no conscience or logic that is applied when you use a computing tool, period. There is logic in its methodology, but it's not about right or wrong or should I do this. There's only could I. There's never should I. And
yeah,
so bad actor becomes the perspective of the person observing. And if you say, "Well, murder is bad unless it's somebody I like killing somebody I don't like,"
Yeah.
that you
And you could
lose
get
the
into
high ground.
gray super quick, right? Especially international, especially with the politics here at play, especially in modern day age.
So
But if we
where
can at least say, this is my data, it should be with me, you should not get it, and we agree that getting that private data is a bad action, like let's try to like limit it.
yes,
Do you know what I
yes,
mean?
and
To yeah,
I think the way that you couch that is absolutely right. There is the morality of whatever it's being used for is not a computing or frankly even a security question. But
yes,
what my view of all of this is complete alignment with what you're saying. If it's mine, I should have control of it. And so from what quantum will be capable of doing to your currently encrypted data that you own and you should have the control over is wreck that idea completely. It will be able
yeah,
to break your encryption algorithms and take your data and decrypt it. So, how is that different from where we are now? Nation states, name your favorite, there's lots of them, even including the United States, depending on how you look at it, have been taking data that belongs to others in an encrypted form that they have no capability of currently decrypting. But they are taking the data and storing it with the idea that soon enough they will have technology that will allow them to decrypt all of it. Okay, if that's credit card numbers, that's going to be a big problem financially across the world. What if it's launch codes? Then it gets to be a little more scary, obviously, a smaller subset of the data. But at the end of the day, if you can't have real encryption and it can be broken within less than a year, that's reasonable with quantum. It's not a lifetime or 10 lifetimes. It's now. Okay. So everything that is currently encrypted with RSA that is being stolen is as good as clear text once quantum hits the market. And so the sooner that people who have this data and who doesn't get to using post quantum encryption methodology on what they're already storing, then if it gets stolen, we're kind of back to where we started, which is it's RSA, it'll take 1,000 years, et cetera, et cetera. The difference between quantum and the older encryption methodologies is the whole point of the FIPS 204, 205 algorithms, is that it's not just a calculation. There's a whole another set of elements that make it so that you can't break it with a calculator.
yeah, yeah.
And so
And
I
it's a
think
little bit
that's
right now like closer to what we've seen early days in cybersecurity, where I mean, if you're looking at the business value, it's harder to quantify, right? And it's almost saying you're gonna, the business values pay me whatever because if you do, like, you have a lower risk of going to zero instead of basically, right? Like
sure.
all
Well,
of your stuff is gone unless we partner on this protection here.
there is the whole ransomware thing. There's all of that. What concerns me isn't that somebody's gonna use quantum to encrypt my data, because it's expensive and difficult. What concerns me is that people, in particular nation states, and eventually I can see quantum hacking as a service because that's how it goes. Ransomware is now a service that's available.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, the real important piece of this now, from my perspective, is that the government in the United States, the big financials, the big banks and the big credit card companies and the big manufacturing companies are going to be better prepared for this because they have big staff and they understand the problem and they have people working on the research and et cetera, et cetera. But there are tens of thousands of just credit unions and small banks that are going to be at the end of a very long line when quantum actually starts breaking encryption.
yeah,
And the time between that day and when they can solve that problem is longer than it will help them. They will
yeah,
get intruded upon, their data taken and decrypted long before they can even gather the inventory of what's encrypted and with what.
yeah, Yeah.
From my perspective, if all businesses that have PII and that have financials and that secret data, that they should all consider building their C-bomb now. And the C-bomb is the cryptographic bill of materials. Understand the scope of your data, what it's encrypted, where it lives, and what the size of your problem is. And then
Yeah.
look at what's most important. And if you want to spend time, and not everybody has lots and lots of money to fix all these problems, but if you can prioritize, you can say, well, they're going to get my mailing list, but they're not going to get my customer's social security numbers. They're not,
Yeah.
right. That whole decision about risk has to do with context. And
Correct.
once you have a C-bomb, you have that collection of the inventory of what you have and where it lives and what's the most vulnerable. In general, what I believe we will find is the oldest and least protected encrypted assets are the most valuable
Yeah.
because we did them first. We
Yeah.
decided that, gee whiz, we'd better protect our customers' account numbers and their financial data and all the rest of these things. We've been doing that a long time with the assurance that once it's encrypted this way, we're fine. Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I think what I try to evangelize when I talk to people about this is, yes, you have to fix this eventually. Yes, you have to do something to replace what you have as encryption with something that is post quantum, that
Yeah.
the basic prevention mechanism built in. And once you understand what you have and you get started on that, you can make progress. If you don't ever get started on your C-bomb, you have to do that first anyway, or you won't have any idea what it is you need to encrypt. And so if you use a tool that will produce the C-bomb and show you what it is you have and and allows you to prioritize and run that, even at this point, if you ran it annually, it would be better than what everyone is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
My view of it is that if you set up a tool where, I'll give you one example. I'm trying not to use names, but I'm going to use the name. If you use a tool like Tripwire, it catches change. So if you're watching your file systems and you add a new file, then add it to your C-bomb because
Yeah.
you've changed something. So go fix that and add it. So you have this continuous monitoring.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you have. And so when you get to, okay, now I'm going to spend money and I'm going to try to fix this, and you prioritize, then okay, you can start using PQE and ultimately the last element of this is encryption in transit. There are tools out there that will allow you to use PQE on top of TLS 1.3. So you've already got a handshake mechanism. You just need to replace the encryption algorithm with something that's
Yeah.
PQE.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, and refreshingly practical in a world that many don't understand, right? So I love the insight. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. So look, right, and I have a ton of questions, right, mainly around the quantum hacking as a service and this kind of like a threat that's really developing. But it's been a gold mine of insights. But before we close, I want to leave it on something positive. So
Good. Okay.
give me a belief or hope you hold about the future of cybersecurity that's a little bit more optimistic. And that's sometimes challenging, but I challenge you to
Great.
think about that. Yeah.
No, I'll start with where we ended, which is quantum, which I still think is the greatest threat we have in front of us. Some friends of mine have started a company, and they have the C-bomb generator, they have the quantum encryption mechanism to encrypt over the top of your existing stuff, and they have a tool that'll allow you to modify your TLS 1.3 already done. These are in ready to use right now. There are several firms in the EU that are already implementing these tools, and they're getting started here in the US. And I have great hope that we will, as a society, accept the fact that change is something that, what is it? The only constant is change, right? So that we have to continue to look forward, even if somebody says that's 3 years down the road. Okay. What if it isn't? What if it's today's perspective is it's 3 years from now, and tomorrow there's a big leap forward in this technology, and now it's 30 minutes down the road? As an information security people, we should take all of the facts that are current with the understanding that until the first real computer hit the market, when the first PC, the Apple, the first one hit the market, nobody had any idea what personal computing was going to become, or that there are now more mobile computing devices, cell phones, etc., than there are people on the planet. This could not have been foreseen because we
Yeah.
didn't understand the concept of what we were getting into. And I think the truth is about where we go forward every day. There is another person out there, a smart guy or girl that is just pounding away at the next thing that is going to change what happens. And so it's not about being afraid. And I think this is what I mean about when I was talking about risk is fear doesn't help you. It's not about fear. It's not being afraid that we're going to have a bad day and I need to be prepared for the bad day. It's that things are changing every 15 minutes. And if you're not looking ahead, it's like driving blindfolded. They do put bumps on the road so that you can tell when you're changing lanes, but that's not going to help you with the semi that's stopped in front of you.
Yeah.
So I think we're moving forward, that I feel positive about the things that are coming. And I think that the news that is coming from our government and from others is at least happening now, that there is notification that, look, we're going to have to do something about this. This is not I think I would use the equating it to global warming, but there is actually a fairly large population of people that believe global warming is not truth.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'm one of those guys that believes in gravity.
Yeah.
So I don't want to deny
Data.
that either. So
Yeah.
I will say from the good news perspective about my own interests, I'm reaching out to people in particular in finance because it's the world that I'm familiar with already, and saying, look, give me an opportunity for free. I'm not going to charge you anything. I will give me an opportunity to explain this. And if you choose to do business with me and you want me to help you find solutions and get you the right people, I will love to do that as well. But, when the bridge is out, you put a sign up. You
Yeah.
don't let people get all the way to the where the bridge is out at 60 miles an hour. You have to
Yeah.
tell them. And if they choose
Yeah.
to go 60 miles an hour and off the bridge, too bad, I guess. But at the end of the day, if the best we can do is warn them now, then that's what I think we
Warn
can.
them, help them, right? Take the proper steps to really prevent something from happening that's much worse. So
Yeah, I
absolutely.
have a funny saying I was taught by my grandfather a long time ago. He says, ignorance can be fixed with education. Stupid is forever. You 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 have to know that you don't know and do something about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you're ignorant and you can get educated.
Yeah.
If you're gonna
And I
run
think the
blindly
theme the
headlong,
theme is really like, the more you know, the more you don't know as well, right? So,
this is the
yeah,
nature
don't
of knowledge, yes.
yes. Hopefully you're not stupid at the end, and
No, no, and so here's a good way to think about it. My grandfather raised me, and he was 96 years old when he passed. In his lifetime, his first job was driving a horse-drawn school bus. And in his lifetime, he saw all of the things that we now take for granted, the wide variety of power options that we have, and the interstate travel highway system, and the space shuttle, and the cell phone, and all of these things in his life.
yeah,
Think about, okay, so we know that our human knowledge is exponentially growing because learning gets spread and new learning occurs on top of that learning, and off we go. We're supposed to be getting smarter over time. I've yet to find a lot of evidence that that's universal, but I believe that we're capable as long as we understand the rules of the game, which is don't stop learning, pay
yeah,
attention.
yeah. Be curious, right? Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you so much for the time, for the wisdom, for our listeners. Where can they find you? Or, if they want to get in touch with WoodSec, what do they do here?
So the website is woodsec.io. You can schedule appointments with me, etc. I'm Robert at woodsec.io. You can email me. Those are the two best methods.
Perfect.
Once we get in touch, I can certainly have text conversations and those things when I'm introduced to people, but I'm trying to avoid my cell phone going off every 30 seconds forever. So
Of
I don't give
course.
that number out just yet.
Yeah, not yet. And going into the holidays, especially not now. So, Bob, thank you so much. To listeners, thank you for chiming in. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and secure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honey.